A Beacon in the Dark by Noha Ijiachi. Chapter 25. Blooming Blossom. Ajaka was pretty sure she accidentally entered a parallel universe that morning and hadn't realized. Really, which other conclusion could she come to? She got downstairs in the communal area to go get some breakfast. She found some of her classmates already there in various states of sleepiness and bedheads, sitting at the kitchenette counter and tables, munching on their different kind of breakfasts. And then she noticed when Midoriya and Todoroki were not only not completely awkward around one another as she had expected to see happen, but they were also amicably chatting, sharing the same breakfast, sitting in front of one another at the counter, their knees bumping. Ajako rubbed at her eyes and looked again. Yep, still the perfect image of disgustingly mourning people lovingly speaking and smiling to one another as others around them were still half-asleep zombies. Oh, Midoriya says, turning to her with a smile, his eyes pale in a way that suggests he has his quirk turned off. Good morning, Uraraka. Good morning, she replies, tilting an eyebrow. Todoroki is looking at her with an expression halfway between amusement and defiance, as if he's challenging her to say anything at all. I think me and Todoroki might have finished the last of the rice, Midoriya says, pensive, completely oblivious to the silent look banter happening between her and Todoroki. I'm sorry, I'll go put on some more. He gets up from his seat, his right hand not breaking contact with the counter as he walks down toward the kitchenette to go fiddle with the rice cooker. Ajako immediately takes his place, her voice barely a whisper. Okay, what the heck? Todoroki's lips do a strange thing, as if he's trying not to grin at her while he shrugs. No shrugging! Ajako immediately replies, pointing her finger at him. Yesterday night, you were angsty McAngst, and now you two are sharing breakfast like a lovey-dovey couple. How does that work? He asked me on a date. Todoroki replies in a low voice, hiding his smile behind his hands as he crosses his fingers under his chin. Saturday. Ajako blinks, her mouth hanging open, and she turns to look at Midoriya that's palming at the rice cooker with a perplexed expression. That little! Where does he even keep all those guts? She asks more to herself than anything else, making Todoroki giggle snort. You're still the chicken, you know that, right? Yeah, I guess I am. Todoroki replies, placid, but I'm the luckiest chicken on the planet. He gets up after that, approaching Midoriya to help him out with the rice cooker. Midoriya turns to him with a big smile, and Todoroki kind of leans way too into Midoriya's personal space as they go through the necessary steps of making the thing work. Wow, who glued those two together this morning? Agakare snickers by her side in her pink pajamas when she leans over the counter to grab the sugar. Ochako is still staring. They almost look like a couple. They may be one by the end of the week, Ajako replies, her voice faint with amazement. What? Izuku is definitely glad that he decided to bite the bullet and speak with Todoroki directly the prior evening because he could not imagine how much more awkward his second day back on school grounds might have been had he not done so. Instead, he got to share breakfast with him, both of them much more relaxed around one another, back into that comforting, easy relationship they shared before. Spending his day with Todoroki, Uraraka, and Ida had been great after so long he'd been missing from school. He felt back in his element with this added twist of being able to spend literally the entire day with all his beloved friends now that they all shared living space in the dormitories. He had taken a new decision, too, after finally being able to take an hour to sit down and speak with Aizawa-sensei regarding his quirk. They've come to the mutual agreement that Izuku should try to keep his quirk off whenever there was no need to use it, when it was safe to do so. That would inevitably make some things harder, like trying to work the rice cooker. One time had it been enough to memorize all the steps needed clearly. But it was worth it to try keep his mental state more balanced. It was pretty clear at this point that having his radar on at all times and only turning it off for the night was not the way to go if he wanted to keep level-headed and calm. Still, he would need some time to get used to this, going by how much more relaxed he felt when he turned it back on at the start of their training session. It was kind of inevitable that he'd feel vulnerable without his quirk, but he was surrounded by trusted friends and teachers. He needed to put some more faith in them. They deserved that much at least. They were supposed to be getting ready for the Hero Provisional License exam, training to create their own special move. Izuku ended up dilly-dallying a bit as he pondered on what could that be for him. All Might had his punches, but he already found out those were not his forte, not to mention he usually applied one for all to his knowledge of hand-to-hand combat, so he never really thought he could have a move that could be designed as special. Should he focus on his radar instead? But even then, he had doubts. Maybe a mix of the two? Wow!
Midoriya, I can see that your head's about to catch fire from here.
Aizawa-sensei's amused voice snapped him out of his musings.
What are you thinking so hard for?
Sensei! Izuku turned embarrassed. I was trying to figure out what could be a special move for me. Not sure how to proceed, to be honest. His classmates were already giving it all in trying different stuff, while he was just standing there like an idiot. Aizawa-sensei hummed, thoughtful.
You have experience with hand-to-hand, Midoriya, don't you?
Izuku blinks, curious about the question. A little bit, yes. Aizawa-sensei stays silent for a few seconds before turning away from Izuku.
Cement toss.
He calls, his voice a little louder.
Can you make a space for me and Midoriya to spar?
What? Izuku stammers, surprised as he feels Cement-toss-sensei's quirk in action, creating a little ring for them.
Here's all yours.
Cement-toss says, amused, once he's done.
Sometimes you don't need to think as much as you need to act.
Aizawa-sensei says as he steps up on the flat surface.
So come up here and act.
That's quite funny coming from you, Sensei. Izuku can't help but say a lopsided smile on his face as he climbs up after him.
The cheekiness, Midoriya. Keep it at bay.
Aizawa-sensei replies, not without a tinge of amusement in his voice.
Now turn off that overworking brain for a bit and get into the flow. The solution will come to you.
Izuku takes a deep breath, steeling himself, and forces his mind to empty as he focuses only on Aizawa-sensei, shifting to a combat position. It has been quite a while since he had the chance for a nice old sparring session, and he probably needs it. Hopefully, Sensei will be right, and an idea will come up to him. Toshinori was standing at the entrance, watching. All the kids seemed to be very into their special move training, and Toshinori definitely wanted to become a better teacher, especially now that he hadn't much more to offer the world other than preparing the new generation of heroes. So he observed closely, making mental notes about each one of his students with the intention to make the rounds and give some tips to all of them. Young Uraraka catches his eyes at some point, floating upside down, giving him a bright smile and a wave, despite her vaguely green face, that he answers to in kind after a couple of seconds. He was gladly surprised to see that his student didn't seem to be offended by the fact he lied to her multiple times in the past. He approaches her not without a bit of tenseness.
What are you thinking for your special move, young Uraraka?
He asks, tilting his head on the side as she keeps floating. I'm not sure, she says, pensive, slowly making a little somersault midair. I was thinking, if I can make myself levitate, I could use the increased mobility to apply what I've learned during my work experience week, but my endurance isn't the best.
That's certainly interesting. If you could make it work, it will surely be quite the surprise move.
Toshinori considers pensive.
I'm sure you will be able to strengthen your quirk more and more as you go on, so don't give up.
She flashes him another big smile. Yes, Sensei! Toshinori kind of wanted to hug her and thank her for being so understanding, but this is not the place nor the time. Hopefully, he will have the chance in a less formal setting. His thoughts are interrupted when he hears an excited, "Whoa, dude! Look at that!" And both he and younger Uraraka, releasing her quirk and landing with a little oof, ends up shuffling to the other side of one of Cement-toss's concrete pillars, curiosity piqued. Oh! Young Uraraka gasps, surprised. There's a sort of ring made of concrete, Aizawa and young Midoriya sparring on it. They are really going at it, both of them wearing focused expressions as they dance around each other, hitting and dodging quick on their feet. Aizawa is holding back. Toshinori can tell. It's understandable. In a real fight, young Midoriya would be destroyed by Aizawa. He simply lacks the combat experience his teacher has in spades. It's clear that Aizawa's objective is to give Midoriya a chance to figure something out. Young Midoriya, on the other hand, is both totally focused and giving it all, and also clearly having fun, if the little grin on his face is anything to come by. Some of the other kids are getting increasingly distracted by the intense sparring session. Young Ashido and Kaminari are even standing nearby the ring, cheering as if they are spectating a boxing competition. Toshinori chuckles to himself at that, remembering how much young Ashido likes hand-to-hand techniques. Aizawa and young Midoriya seems deaf to it all, too focused in their own little training. At some point, Midoriya seems to call a pause, holding his hand up.
In a real fight, your enemies won't give you pauses, you know that.
Aizawa says, amused, but stopping as requested.
Young Midoriya chuckles.
I know, sorry,
He drags his forearm across his forehead, drying away some sweat.
It's way too hot in here, I'm cooking myself. And with that, he sheds the upper piece of the school gym uniform and the white t-shirt he's wearing, casually launching them in a ball of cloth outside the ring. There's a moment of absolute glacial silence as both he and Aizawa start sparring again, apparently oblivious to it all. Young Ashido and Kaminari definitely look less like they want to cheer now.
Toshinori can only imagine it's the first time young Midoriya's classmates have seen the web of scarred skin covering his back, going by their reactions. Toshinori approaches the two clearly distressed students, distracting them with a pat on their back and a casual,
"So, why don't you two show me what you've got?"
He can't help but think of his own scars as he walks away with Ashido and Kaminari. Marks on a weathered body, marks that shows that despite everything, he is still alive, just as young Midoriya is. But painful marks nonetheless. Chances are all these kids will gain marks of their own in the future, big ones too, if they hadn't already, like young Midoriya and Todoroki did. It is the inevitability that comes with a work where injuries and near-death experiences are always around the corner. But for now, he can let them dream a bit longer as he listens to their ideas for a special move, giving pointers whenever he can.
Izuku might be coming up with something. Sparring with Aizawa-sensei is fun! The man is clearly experienced and holding back. Izuku is not stupid. He figured that if Aizawa-sensei was to fight seriously, Izuku would probably get his butt handed to him in 10 seconds flat. And it has been way too long since he had the chance to just forget one for all and rely only on the strength of his own body instead. He should probably find a way to fit in some more sparring sessions in his days if he can find someone willing to work out with him. He feels a bit rusty, and that's no good. Ichiko-san would probably twist him into a pretzel as a punishment if she was to see the way he was fighting. An idea was forming in his mind as the sparring continued, especially thanks to the little discussion about his quirk he had with Aizawa-sensei himself. Something that could definitely be considered a special move, something that wasn't meant to be abused, but used only when strictly needed. Izuku decides to try on a whim. He lowers his guard for a second, Aizawa-sensei already on him to take advantage of it. He probably wants to flip Izuku over, going by the hand that closes around his wrist. Izuku focuses, sending a signal that seems to spark through the physical connection between them like electricity, and Aizawa-sensei's focus is broken by that, allowing Izuku to overturn the situation and send Sensei flying and hitting the ring with his back. There's a moment of stunned silence, Aizawa-sensei not moving from the floor and then asking, "What was that?" in a tone that, thankfully, did not suggest he was mad at all. Izuku grins. It's clear that Sensei has had enough for the moment, since he's sitting but not making a move to stand back up as they both catch their breath. Either that, or he doesn't want to push Izuku around too much. Admittedly, he's grateful for the pause, since the usual manageable ache of his back started to get a bit more pronounced in the last couple of minutes.
Izuku let himself reopen the scope of his radar as he stretches to relieve soreness, jumping a bit when he feels the familiar presence of All Might right outside the ring. "Oh, hi!" he says, breathless, turning to him with a smile. "For how long have you been watching?"
A bit.
All Might replies, his tone light.
Have you figured something out?
"Maybe," Izuku replies distractedly, drying some more sweat away from his face. He can feel droplets running down his body and mentally curses himself for not bringing a towel with him as he takes in more of his surrounding. All Might wasn't the only one watching, clearly, going by the focus a lot of his classmates are giving him. Izuku blushes a little, surprised, hoping the reaction would not be obvious since he's already pretty flushed. "Yo, dude! Catch!" Kirishima says as he approaches the ring, throwing something at him. Izuku's hands clasp around it, feeling water slosh. A bottle. He gratefully smiles at Kirishima as he opens it and drinks generously. "That was pretty dope! Also, sit between us!" Kirishima continues, lowering his voice. "You should probably put your shirt back on." Izuku blinks before realizing. Right, he's back. Sorry about that," he stammers, flustered, trying to pinpoint where he had thrown his clothing. "I imagine it mustn't be a nice sight." "What? No!" Kirishima sounds perplexed before snickering. "I mean, is that what you think? You were distracting about half the class." Izuku frowns, confused, only making Kirishima laugh more. "Bro, you're packed! I don't know how it works in blind people land, but for us with sight, that's generally pretty hot." Izuku splutters, blushing furiously, and searches for his clothes with a bit more urgency. There's definitely something that he hadn't thought about at all. Kirishima is laughing almost hysterically now while Izuku finally manages to find his shirt and hurriedly puts it back on. And that's definitely Todoroki's light turning disappointed. He can feel it in his radar. Oh my god! Speaking of which, one of these days you should try to bench press me. I want to see if you can. Kirishima adds cheerfully because apparently trying to embarrass Izuku is the funny game of the day. Can you two stop being teenagers for like a minute? Aizawa-sensei mutters from his spot on the ground, unamused, and yeah, Izuku is definitely about done with this conversation for the day. It probably shows on his face, because Kirishima starts to laugh again. "Hey, guys, can I ask you a favor?" Their lunch went just fine, like nothing happened, really, just as Shoto hoped. They chatted, relaxed, the way they did back then, in what now felt like ages ago, before the Kiyashi Ward incident in the summer camp, though Midoriya seemed distracted every now and then, clearly deep in thought. Shoto hadn't asked, some lingering awkwardness still making him feel like he should not pry. That and the fact he's been openly ogling at Midoriya as he sparred with Aizawa-sensei during the morning training, without realizing that Midoriya probably felt all of it at first. When as they were pretty much about to finish eating, Midoriya blurted that question. Ida adjusts his glasses with a little questioning hum. "There are some things I want to try out," Midoriya continues at that. "I spoke with Aizawa-sensei about the ways I can apply my quirk, but the problem is that I need some test subjects to do so, and, well..." There's a moment of silence, Midoriya rushing to add, "It's nothing dangerous, I promise, but I thought I should ask permission first." "What did you have in mind?" Uraraka asks, curious. "There's this thing. Remember how I could feel Kachan's direction before Kamino Ward? It was like I pinned him down on my mental map. It just sort of went away on its own, that feeling, so I would like to try to do that again. See if I can, and for how long it lasts. If I can control it in some way, you know?" Midoriya sniffs, moving his food around distractedly. "Of course, if you give me permission. If you feel something weird or out of place, just anything, let me know right away, okay? I don't want to hurt any of you or something." They all frown, confused. "Why would that hurt us?" Shoto asks, perplexed. Midoriya purses his lips, a little scowl appearing on his face. "Nothing, just, to be sure," he says, flat, before sighing. "So that's okay with you? I'll be careful, I promise." "Of course. You can proceed. I have no issue with that.
Ida replies, placid, rapidly joined by Shoto and Uraraka also giving their consent.
You can always come to us if you need anything, you know that.
Midoriya's smile was a little tense as he said,
Okay, thank you. But promise me that if you feel something strange, you'll tell me right away.
Shoto rolled his eyes, incapable of stopping his hand from patting Midoriya's head and mussing his soft hair. You worry too much. It'll be fine. Midoriya's smile is still a bit strained, but he didn't add anything else. A couple of days passed in a blur of training, preparing for the upcoming exam, and in some cases, even visits to the development studio. Izuku himself had been one between many of his classmates paying a visit, interested in upgrading their costumes. Hazume Mei had been there when Izuku went, sounding very interested in his quirk for some reason. At his protest that there was probably very little that could be done in terms of support gear for a quirk like his, she waved him off, pretty much forcing him to take some tests for almost an entire afternoon. Izuku doubted much could be done with those, but Mei had been adamant and very, very pushy, so Izuku just gave in. As long as he got the arm and leg guards he asked for, he was good with letting Mei have some fun with whatever crazy project she had in mind.
The professional license exam,
Uraraka mutters pensive. Wonder how it'll work. Izuku stops typing on his braille keyboard, thinking. They were sitting at a table in the communal area. It was just him and her at first, but bit by bit, Izuku heard other people joining them at the table, mostly silent, as they all focused on their own works. Then Uraraka said that aloud, despite the fact she mostly sounded like she was talking to herself. Yaoyorozu hummed, tapping her pen against her finger distractedly.
Who knows? I looked it up and the test changes every year. They presented all sorts of scenarios to work with in the past, from villain battling to rescue operations in a disaster zone,
she says after a couple seconds of silence.
Rescue operations, huh?
Ida interjects.
Wouldn't be surprised if they opt with something of that kind this year, considering what happened recently.
If they do, we are lucky,
Uraraka says with a smile in her voice.
We have Midoriya with us. The guy that can find a needle in a haystack.
They all chuckle at that, but Izuku is frowning to himself, pensive. It's true that his radar would be useful in a situation where people needed to be found and rescued, but recent happenings have certainly shown to him a glaring flaw in himself that made his radar not nearly as useful as it could be.
Whoa, that's your serious thinking face there, Midoriya. What's on your mind?
It's just... he slowly answers after a beat of silence, pulling at his lower lip.
It's true that my radar is very useful in that sense, but I have a problem.
A problem? What kind of problem?
Ida asks, perplexed.
I don't know how to properly relay information to others,
Izuku admits, frowning.
I don't have a real sense of distance. I was too young when I lost my sight. I can feel where people are and how distant I perceive them to be from me, but trying to explain that feeling to others is a whole other bag of issues. In an emergency situation, we couldn't afford that kind of time wasting, and I am only one person. So even if I can feel where everyone is, what am I supposed to do in a situation where multiple people are in need of help at the same time?
A long silence follows his declaration. Izuku sighs, relaxing back against his chair.
It's a pretty big flaw,
he mutters to himself, pensive. What could he do to correct it?
I hadn't realized that,
Ida finally says after a while, shifting on his chair.
But I understand what you mean. It's certainly something that needs to be addressed.
Right?
Izuku replies, throwing his right hand up a bit.
I'm not quite sure what to do about it, though. I can't base my sense of direction on yours, and you cannot understand how distance feels to me. It's kind of a mess.
Well, Yaoyorozu intervenes.
I'm sure there must be a way to solve that. It will be like learning another language. We should have to find the right way to translate the information from your language to ours.
Izuku hums, pensive. Translating the information. An idea pops in his head and he blinks, his hand snapping in midair.
I think I might have something, he says. if I can't perceive distance the way you guys do, then it means I will have to learn how to read it in my own way. Just like learning a language, as you said, Yorozu. But I will need your help. If you guys are willing, I think I might have an idea.
Aizawa almost wanted to say no when Midoriya approached him during the morning with the proposition. The boy was a trouble magnet, and when he asked Aizawa if he and his friends could have permission to use a training ground during the evenings, his first instinct had been to reply, absolutely not.
But he listened instead, the boy explaining his predicament and how he wanted to correct it.
And Aizawa had to admit that it was definitely a good idea, for once. And surely something that Midoriya needed in order to grow and better himself as a future hero.
What has happened during the camp when Midoriya had been unable to explain where Koda was certainly came to mind. Had he been able to back then, things would have probably gone very differently.
So he gave in the end.
Nezu asked him to be present at all times to make sure the students would not accidentally hurt themselves when Aizawa had brought the idea up in the chain of command, which was understandable.
That's why he now was sitting on the skirts of training ground Delta, sipping on a soda while listening in to the students, helping Midoriya out with his special training session. Okay, here's another one. Did you hear about the guy that invented the knock-knock jokes? Kominori, please spare us. He won the Nobel Prize. For the love of...
Guys, shush! He's focusing. If you keep chatting his ear off, it's going to take twice the time.
You should have brought something to read with you, like I did. Oh, shut up, class president. Toshinori snickered, sitting near him. The man joined them during that evening for the first time, curious to know what was up with his pupil.
So what is it that they are doing exactly?
He asks when the silence falls back on the radio channel.
Yorozu made some sort of distance trackers. Kids are wearing them and hiding in various places in the training ground. Midoriya is supposed to try translate the distance in meters and the position relative to him on a clock face-based system.
Aizawa gives him the abridged version, taking another sip of his soda out the straw.
And is it working? He was a disaster at first, but he's learning pretty fast.
Aizawa says, distractedly taking his phone out of his pocket.
Hopefully he'll be ready for the provisional license exam.
Ida, 102 meters at by 5. Uraraka, 34, 11. Todoroki, 27 horizontally, 10 vertically. Am I 12?
Comes Midoriya's voice, quiet and focused, after a long beat of silence.
Almost.
Yorozu hums in the radio.
17 vertically. The others you are off by a small margin of some meters each, but the position relative to you is right. The vertical plane is more confusing somehow.
Midoriya mutters distractedly.
Okay. Kaminari. 43 Tornaground 4. Mineta 207 at 8. Tsuyu, whoa, you are up there. It's 66 vertically, 52 horizontally at 9.
They silently listen in while the boy rattles the information out like a little machine. Yorozu not intervening anymore.
You tend to overestimate the distances a bit in general, but you are definitely getting there,
she says, satisfied once he's done.
Okay, shuffle positions, everyone. Let's do it another couple of times before we call it a day.
Midoriya huffs into the radio.
I think my brain is trying to leak out of my ears right now,
he says, sounding tired but happy.
Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Midoriya, if you don't stop thanking us, I might get an allergic reaction. For real. The boy snickers.
Alright, sorry, Kirishima. I'll find another way to make it up to you all.
You can make it up to us all by applying what you are learning now in situations that require so. Ida intervenes, serious as usual.
Alright, I get it.
Midoriya laughs.
Everyone ready? I'll try to be faster this time.
Aizawa puts down his now empty can and stretches a bit, yawning. At his side, Toshinori has relaxed in his chair with a smile and that proud man expression he cannot seem to shake off whenever Midoriya does something smart.
Sometimes it's easy being a teacher, especially when the students seem to be doing all the work for us, don't you think?
Aizawa asks, making him laugh. Inko cannot remember when it had been the last time her kitchen felt so crowded. To be fair, it really wasn't that long ago, since before the start of high school, she, Izuku, Ichigo, and Miki had plenty of meals sitting at her kitchen table. But the three men that were currently there had a much more imposing presence with their considerable heights and physiques, making the room feel smaller than it really was. They arrived not long ago, perfectly mannered and thanking her for her invitation to dinner. Toshinori was not new to this, of course, having turned into a frequent peruser of her cooking. But Agent Tsukuuchi and Mr. Aizawa were new entities, and she was definitely doing her best to make a great dinner. She felt it was right to give these people an evening to relax. A little thank you for everything they've done to help and care for Izuku. Oh, speaking of which, Tsukuuchi said at some point, with everything that has happened, we could never find the right moment, but Miss Midoriya, do you think it could be possible to have some of you and your son's time on Sunday afternoon? There's still that medal waiting for him. It would be best to have the ceremony before the start of the new trimester, probably. Inko had turned, blinking. Oh my, you are right, she sighed. It feels like we didn't have a minute to catch our breath lately. He doesn't even have a suit yet.
We could go pick one up on Saturday,
Toshinori intervened with a small smile.
Kind of unfortunate we have to make do with so little time, but young Midoriya will probably be too busy once lessons start again.
Yes, I agree, she replied, putting her phone on the table near Toshinori. Could you please call him for me on speakers? I can't take my hands off this right now or it'll burn, she added, pointing at the pot on her stove. The man complied, and Izuku picked up at the third ring. Hi, Mom! His voice sounds a bit distorted through the speaker. What's up? Hey, sweetie, just wanted to tell you, she says, carefully stirring the sauce she was making. This Sunday there will be the ceremony at the police station. We should go pick up a suit for you on Saturday. The ceremony? What? Oh! Izuku sounds surprised, and then he chuckles, embarrassed. I completely forgot about that. Okay. Wait, did you say you wanted to get a suit on Saturday? Yes, we should meet up at... No! Izuku says, urgent. He coughs. I mean, sorry. I can't on Saturday. Inko blinks, perplexed, turning to the phone on the table. What do you mean you can't? Got something to do? Like what? At that, he mutters something completely incomprehensible. Honey, I didn't get that. She sighs, patient. I said I got, a date. He stammers, clearly embarrassed. Inko looks at the phone with eyes wide, like it's an alien object. So, Izuku continues, clearing his throat. Sorry, but it's really important. Do you think we can go pick up a suit on Sunday morning instead? I guess, she carefully says, tilting an eyebrow. But we will have to meet up pretty early if we want to make sure we have time. Okay, Mom, that's no problem, Izuku replies, much more cheerful. Text me the details when you can, okay? I have to go now. We are making dinner and it's almost ready. Oh, and say hi to all my Aizawa-sensei and Mr. Tsukuuchi from me when they get there. Okay, sweetie, have fun. The call closes with one last bye. She hasn't moved from her shocked position, yet a surprised silence stretching in the room. Well, that's... no. Aizawa says deadpan, before adding, is something burning? Inko snaps out of her stupor, turning to the stove to frantically stir the sauce again as Toshinori starts to laugh heartily. Izuku is a bundle of nerves as he waits on a couch downstairs, nervously fiddling with his cane. He had no idea what the day has in store for him. Todoroki told him that he found a place he'd like to go and that it was a surprise. Izuku hadn't thought much of it at first, kind of grateful for the fact that Todoroki took that problem straight off his hands, especially with how busy they've all been in the past few days with their trainings and their visits to the development studio to get updated costumes. But now it was Saturday, and the realization that he had actually asked Todoroki on a date, and they were definitely going on a date, just the two of them, finally crashed into him full force. I'm going on a date with Todoroki. Oh my god, what was I thinking? Midoriya. Izuku jumps before releasing a little tense laugh.
Hey!
He forces himself to say, getting up.
Good morning!
Morning.
Todoroki replies easily.
Ready? Izuku nods, not trusting his voice not to crank, as Todoroki gently guides his free hand to rest in the crook of his right elbow the way he usually does whenever Izuku had his quirk turned off and needed some more guidance.
He does this all the time. Stop being nervous about things he does all the time. It's just your friend Todoroki. This isn't any different, you idiot.
Izuku thinks, giving himself a little pep talk to calm down his nerves. If Todoroki had noticed his tenseness, he did not comment as they made their way out of school grounds in casual clothing, the August sun beating on them mercilessly.
So, where are we going?
Izuku finally asks, once he calmed down a bit, his hand still vaguely sweaty on the handle of his cane. Told you, it's a surprise. Todoroki replies, apparently calm, but Izuku felt a note of tenseness in his voice. It was consoling to realize he was not the only nervous one. That definitely manages to relax him more as he turns to Todoroki with a small smile.
Thank you. I know it must not have been easy to find something to do when I'm like this,
he says, gentle. Like what? Todoroki replies, perplexed, and Izuku vaguely gestures with his cane.
You know, blind?
He adds when Todoroki doesn't say anything. Todoroki scoffs. Give me a break, he mutters, making Izuku laugh. There's plenty of stuff to do, Midoriya. It wasn't as difficult as you think.
Alright, if you say so.
Izuku snickers as they reached the subway station. Izuku let himself being guided, trusting, but when they entered in one of the carriages and he could feel how crowded it was even without his quirk, Izuku tensed a bit. He has to admit he did not like too much the idea of being out in public with his quirk turned off. Don't worry, Todoroki mutters, a steadying arm circling around Izuku's shoulders. I won't let anything happen to you. Izuku blinks, feeling his eyes sting a bit and his cheeks burning. Todoroki immediately picked up on his nervousness without needing a single word, and his voice had been so warm and reassuring that Izuku can't help but feel a little moved as his heart beats madly in his chest. He takes a deep breath, relaxing against Todoroki's firm presence with a little smile. He knows he can trust him. Okay, so... Shoto hesitates. It seemed like a good idea at first, but now that they are in front of the museum, he feels dumb and unsure. In that way, only Midoriya's presence manages to bring out of him. There's this art installation. The pieces are actually meant to be touched and not just being looked at, so I thought that it would be fun. He trails off, Midoriya blinking at him, pale eyes a little wide in surprise, before a big smile opens on his face. That sounds great, he says happily, his fingers tightening a bit on Shoto's arm. Thank you for finding this. I don't think I've ever been to an art installation before. Shoto manages the win over the need to take a giant relieved sigh as he guides an obviously excited Midoriya up the stairs to the museum. Midoriya decided to fold his cane and put it in his pocket after they got off the subway, silently putting his trust 100% in Shoto's hands, which made him feel both honored and a bit scared. So he was being extra careful to make sure he would accidentally make him stumble or something. The lady behind the counter, going by the look on her face, probably recognized him and maybe Midoriya too, when they entered and approached the counter to purchase their tickets. Still, she didn't say anything as she printed the tickets out for them, Midoriya fiddling with his wallet. Let me, Shoto says, putting a hand on Midoriya's. He turns to him with a little blush. There's no need. Just let me treat you, okay? Shoto insists softly. It was my idea to come here after all. But it was me that asked you to go on a He clears his throat, blushing even further. I mean... Shoto chuckles, silently paying for the both of them. The lady is still looking at them with kind of dreamy eyes. He guides Midoriya, that's still a bit red, as he puts his hand back on Shoto's elbow to the exhibition, smiling to himself. The art installation turns out to be the perfect choice.
The sculptures are mostly abstract pieces that don't seem to be representing anything in particular, with all their weird shapes and colors. Midoriya asks Shoto to describe them to him as he happily palms at the different textures of the materials used, ranging from synthetic fur in bright neon colors to plastic shaped in geometric patterns, laughing at Shoto's outrageously bad descriptions. He's clearly having fun, and so is Shoto, as they take their sweet time going through the pieces, all nervousness and embarrassment completely forgotten. They stop in front of a dark box with 2 holes barely big enough to fit a hand in. It's dark inside too, from what little Shoto can see, unable to make out the content. The title of this one seems to be "Try Put Your Hands In If You Dare," and Midoriya laughs when he reads it aloud to him. "A challenge," he says, smiling, palming at the outside surface of the box. "Should we?" "I have no idea what's in there," Shoto admits, careful. "Maybe we can cheat a bit with your quirk." Midoriya laughs. "But that would ruin the fun. It might be full of cockroaches for all we know." "Okay, let's put one hand each at the same time. No backsies," Midoriya proposes after a couple of seconds of silence. "This way, if we have to get a handful of roaches, at least we'll do it together." "Seems fair," Shoto concedes, guiding Midoriya's right hand near the hole, Shoto's left lingering on the other as they face one another. "At my 3. 1, 2, 3. They both slip their hands in, Midoriya squeezing his eyes shut as he waits for the inevitable horror that they both expect. But Shoto can't feel anything, apparently, and tries to wiggle his fingers a bit, something brushing his palm. Ah! Midoriya makes a surprised noise, his eyes opening again. Then he starts to laugh. "Oh my god, that scared me! There's nothing in here, it's just your hand!" Shoto relaxes with a relieved sigh at not having his hand immersed in bags. Midoriya is right, the box is empty. Looks like they got made fun of by the artist. Midoriya is still snickering, his fingers grazing against Shoto's, and Shoto, hit by a sudden inspiration, interlaces them, his palm connecting with Midoriya's. Midoriya stops laughing, his eyes widening a bit in surprise, and a blush rises to his ears and cheeks. His face turns down to a side as a small, timid smile opens on his lips, his hand in the box gently squeezing back. Shoto really has to call to all his self-control to not lean down and kiss him again right then and there. This might be one of the best days of Izuku's entire life. And yes, he's ranking it around the day he met All Might too. It's that good. He just feels like he's walking 10 meters off the ground. The art installation had been so much fun, and after their little moments with the mystery box, the soft, gentle atmosphere seemed to have fallen on them like a hug for the rest of the visit. They made their way out of the museum, Izuku's hand not resting anymore in the crook of Todoroki's elbow, but gently being held by him, their fingers intertwined. Izuku was still a bit confused by some things, but he could definitely say that he'd like to spend more time holding Todoroki's hand in the future. Thank you very much. They quietly walked down the busy street, feeling no need to fill the relaxed silence with words. The smell of freshly cut grass reached his nostrils, picking his attention. "There's a park nearby," Todoroki says, with his uncanny ability to understand exactly what Izuku was thinking without him having to speak a word. "Want to stop for a bit?" Izuku nods, smiling, letting himself get guided faithfully. They stop to sit on a bench in the shade, away from the sun that's really beating down on them now, the sounds of birds chirping above their heads. Todoroki sits at his left, easily, smoothly, circling Izuku's shoulders with his arm. His right side is pleasantly chilly in the summer heat, and after a moment of hesitation, Izuku gladly leans into him, hand resting on Todoroki's shoulder. "Human air conditioning," he murmurs, making Todoroki chuckle. "So convenient." "I knew you only kept me around for that," Todoroki replies, a smile in his voice. They sit like this for a bit, relaxed. The only sounds around them, the very distant voices of other people in the park, and the birds above them. Then Todoroki shifts gently, leaning a bit into Izuku, warm fingers gently moving a strand of curly hair away from Izuku's forehead. Izuku blinks, his heart beating in his throat as he turns his face up a bit. He can feel Todoroki's soft breathing. Be close! His phone cheerfully announces he got a text from Mom making him jump.
Sorry.
He stammers, embarrassed, not having noticed how tense he was.
Let me just...
He takes the phone out of his pocket, Todoroki's arm still around him. The voiceover reads the text to him in the usual robotic voice, letting him know that the ceremony tomorrow is going to take place at 5 in the afternoon, and that Izuku was to be ready at front of the school gates at 8 in the morning.
Ceremony?
Todoroki asks, curious.
Oh, yeah, it's just...
Izuku hesitates and Todoroki nudges him a bit, a silent invitation to go on.
The police wants to... give me a medal.
Izuku finally adds, embarrassed.
For what I did at the Kiyashi Ward shopping mall.
There's a long moment of silence, and then Todoroki snaps in a low, tired voice. Midoriya.
Izuku blinks, perplexed.
What? Why didn't you tell anyone? Todoroki asks, exasperated. That's a pretty big thing.
It's not.
Izuku hesitates, remembering what both Tsukauchi and All Might said to him way back when he was still in the hospital, about how this wasn't meant for just him, but it was meant to be a symbol, important for many people. He does not finish the sentence. You're impossible, Todoroki mutters, and then Izuku hears the tip-tap of him composing a message on his own phone.
What are you doing?
Izuku asks after a few seconds.
Sending a message to your mother for details, and then forwarding it to Ida so he can forward it to everybody.
Todoroki replies flatly. You idiot.
What? No, there's no need.
Izuku stammers, trying and failing miserably to take the phone away from Todoroki's hands, his fingers only grasping the air.
And why do you have my mom's number?
Over backup. Todoroki replies matter-of-factly.
Of course.
He's still fiddling with his phone, easily dodging Izuku's pitiful attempts to stop him. You can't stop me, Midoriya. I'm coming to the ceremony, and so are our classmates. I can't believe you'd be so incredibly stupid to think this is not an important thing we'd want to be a part of.
Todoroki!
Izuku whines childish.
You're being so mean!
You deserve it. Todoroki doesn't miss a beat, merciless. Here, it's sent. Your destiny is in motion now, so sit tight and enjoy the ride. Dumbass.
Stop insulting me!
Izuku replies, still trying to sound whiny, but failing as his voice turns into a chuckle. He puts his forehead back on Todoroki's shoulder with a sigh.
Besides, aren't you going to visit your mom tomorrow?
I can visit her in the morning. There's plenty of time. Izuku sighs again.
I guess there's nothing I can say to stop you now, isn't it?
Exactly, you big idiot. There's fondness in Todoroki's voice as he circles him in a hug, putting his chin on Izuku's head. You're the worst.
Well, you like this worst, so...
Izuku replies, slightly muffled against Todoroki's chilly shoulder, the words out of his mouth before he can really think about them. He blushes furiously, realizing how blunt he just was, but Todoroki is laughing. That's true. He admits, relaxing the hug, to put a hand under Izuku's chin and tilt his face up. I have terrible tastes. Izuku flashes his tongue at him, childish, making him laugh again. Then Todoroki leans in more, his forehead softly connecting with Izuku's, and Izuku gulps around a knot in his throat, tilting his head a bit on the side. Oh, come on, Todoroki suddenly says, exasperated, and Izuku is confused for all of 2 seconds before he hears a yell in the distance. What? Izuku stammers, immediately turning his quirk on full force. Doing it so suddenly gives him a sensation like whiplash as he shakes his head a bit and tries to put everything around him in focus.
That guy just robbed an old lady and is running toward us with her bag. Todoroki mutters, "What is this, a movie?"
Izuku could feel it now, a frantic light running right toward them. Todoroki must catch his expression, severity in his voice.
"Midoriya, we don't have our provisional licenses yet, may I remind you."
Who said I needed to use my quirk? I'm just a concerned citizen. Izuku replies, a shit-eating grin on his face. Watch this. Izuku stands, taking his cane out of his pocket and unfolding it with a sharp wrist snap. He launches it in the air to grab it by the thinner part at the very end. The robber turns the corner, distracted, as he looks behind him, and Izuku goes for his ankles with the cane in a single swift motion, sending the man tumbling down ungracefully. God damn it. Todoroki hisses from behind him as Izuku literally sits on the spluttering robber to restrain him while two more frantic lights come their way, presumably the old lady that searched for help. There's something undefinable in his voice. You're so goddamn hot. Izuku's eyes widen in surprise, and then he laughs, loudly holding his belly as the old lady with the police agent reaches them, surprise glittering their lights. They ended up getting back to school just in time to not get in trouble for breaking the evening curfew. It seemed that neither of them really wanted the day to end, stretching their time as much as possible. After speaking with the concerned police officer and entrusting him the robber that Midoriya had managed to down with his cane, giving him some crap story about how Midoriya just happened to stumble into the robber and fall on him. He's blind, you see, no acts of unauthorized heroism here. They went to grab lunch. Shoto had been delighted in splurging his money on Midoriya, insisting they go for sushi, and it had been definitely worth to fight the battle to convince him just to see Midoriya's expression of pure food joy as they ate. After all, Shoto wasn't used to spending his money on frivolous things, so he had plenty in his wallet to pamper his date as much as he wanted. His date! It was still strange to think that, but they spent pretty much the rest of the day holding hands like a real couple, happy to sit close to one another as they spoke, the conversation coming to them easily without any need of external distraction. And even if Shoto hadn't tried to kiss him anymore, it still had been pretty good. I'm so desperately in love with this guy that even just holding hands would be enough. And Midoriya definitely looked like he wasn't as confused about his feelings as he had been the night he asked Shoto out on a date. Shoto was being very careful, avoiding hasty conclusion, not really wanting to set himself up for disappointment, but considering Midoriya seemed to be more than happy to hold his hand, and definitely looked like he wanted those kisses that never happened thanks to rude interruptions, Shoto was tentatively thinking that the date had been a success, and that it had been just the first step to turn their relationship into something more. He walked Midoriya to the door of his room, not having met any of their classmates, when they had gotten back in the dormitories. Midoriya hesitated, his back against the door, his hand still connected with Shoto's. "I had fun today," Shoto says, gently letting Midoriya's hand go. "I will see you tomorrow at the ceremony then. Good night, Midoriya." "Yeah, Good night," Midoriya replies, a lopsided smile finding its way on his face. Shoto turns to walk back to the elevator and go up to his room. "Todoroki, wait!" Midoriya calls him, his voice soft. When Shoto turns back to him, he's blushing. "Can you... His pale eyes slide away as he nervously fidgets with his hands back pushed against the still closed door of his room. Heart beating in his throat, Shoto shortens the distance between them again, tentatively putting his hand on Midoriya's hips. Midoriya's hands rises to Shoto's shoulders and then slide down to his chest as Shoto gently holds him, arms encircling his waist. Midoriya doesn't add anything, silently turning his face up a bit, his nose gently bumping against Shoto's chin. Shoto leans down, closing the distance between them, closing his eyes as he presses his lips against Midoriya's. Finally! Midoriya let out a tiny hum, hands sliding back up Shoto's shoulders, arms circling his neck, lips parting a bit in a silent invitation. Shoto doesn't wait for a second request, meeting Midoriya's tongue with his hungrily. It's 10 times better than the messy first kiss they shared. Both of them relaxed and very into it. And this time, it doesn't end with anyone being pushed anywhere. They only stop to catch their breath, softly panting against each other's lips. Midoriya's eyes slowly opens again, his cheeks flushed. I really like you, he murmurs with a sigh. Well, that's pretty obvious at this point, but I thought it was right to say it out loud. He adds a bit indecisive. Shoto smiles gently, bumping his nose against Midoriya's. I really like you too, he murmurs back, happily watching Midoriya smile. Thank you for today. Midoriya chuckles, pushing another little kiss on Shoto's lips. I'll see you tomorrow then. Good night, he finally whispers with a soft smile, gently disentangling himself from the hug to turn and open the door to his room, turning one last smile to Shoto before softly closing it with a click. Shoto goes back to the elevator, feeling as if he's kind of stuck in a dream state. When the sliding doors close in front of him and he starts to go up, he has to recall all of his self-control, pushing both hands closed in fists against his mouth to not wake the entire dormitory with a scream of pure joy that's trying to find a way out of his chest.